And you can see we've got Ieuan Jones from Gwe as well. And Alwyn Ward has joined us from this Mid Wales Partnership. So my name's Sarah Purdue. Just to let you know, we have started recording this session. So I hope that's okay with everybody here. And we're going to start our session in just a moment. So if it's okay with you, because this is a recorded session, we ask you to keep all your questions until the end of the session. You can put them in the chat at the end of the session, or you can unmute. We've saved quite a lot of time at the end to be able to support you with any issues or questions that you might have. So please feel free to do that. But as I say, rather than ask throughout the session, if you could keep that to the end, that would be really, really helpful. And we'll stop recording then at that point when you start to ask your questions. So as you can see on the screen, there is a QR code and there's a link in the chat to the register. So if you could please make sure that you sign that and sign that accurately if that's possible, because we will use the email address you provide there to send you a copy of the presentation and further information as well, please. So this session then was put together really as a response to what NQTs told us that they needed last year. And the two things that they asked for were more support around term 1 and that transition from ITE over to induction, and also support for mentors and writing PLEs. So it's a case of you say we do. So this is why this session has been put on this morning. And it's also really important that you do complete the feedback forms that we will send out to you at the end of the session, because we really, really do need to hear from you about what you need. And we're really, really keen to tailor the approach and everything to make sure that it's exactly what you need in order to succeed at induction. So the purpose of the training today then is to look at this first term and to look carefully in a little bit more depth than perhaps you were able to in session 1 at the writing of those PLEs. But before we start that first this morning, I want you to have a little think. Where are you? It's right before half term. Traditionally one of the busiest terms of the year, I think, and the most tiring terms. So have a little look at the pictures, and I'd like you just to pop in the chat where you feel you are. I can see already in Milford Haven, they're working on a 5. Oh, lots of 5s. I'm going to have to do something to wake you up during the session then, I think. 3, yeah, desperate for that haircut if you're on 3, but it's half term soon, so book yourself in. A couple of 4s hiding in a bucket. Hopefully we'll manage to take that off the top of your head before the end of the session today. I can see that in Calon Cymru they're having issues with the internet. I don't know if you want to try leaving and coming back in. There are issues across the board with the internet today. I think the weather is not really helping us here in Mid Wales. A couple of 2s, still some smiley happy NQTs out there landed, and there's definitely a 3. So it is a windy, rainy day, so bad here. I can see that being an issue as well. So thank you all for joining in. I think I'd like to think that I was at the level of 9, but I think like most of you, I'm more like 5 as well. But by the end of this session, I'm sure we'll all be at 9. I'll do another check-in and we'll see. Okay then, so we're going to start today by looking at the career entry profile and then thinking about how we use that best in order to set some development targets. And then we're going to have a closer look at those standards that you were familiar with last year as QTS standards. But now, as I'm sure you already know, we're working at induction standards. So we're going to have a closer look at perhaps some of the areas of difference there. And also to support you really in your writing of PLEs. So we'll spend a bit of time looking at what makes a good PLE, where to start really, and how you to support you a little bit with your mentors to get those development targets as well. So hopefully you'll find it a useful session. But as so many of you said that you were like a sleepy sheep, I'm going to ask you to do a little task to see if we can warm you up a little bit. I'd like you, please, with that notepad and pen that I asked you to get ready a few moments ago, I'd like you to think about the acronyms that you can see here and make a little note of what you think they stand for. So don't put anything in the chat yet. I'm going to give you 5 minutes just to have a think about those acronyms. They are all related to induction, and we'll see if who's the fastest finger first and who's going to win. But don't put anything in the chat yet. Just think about what they mean and make a little note, if you could, please. Okay, if you are Alex Jones and your friend T Young, that's not a problem at all. I can see in the chat there. But if you could both sign up to the register, that would be really appreciated. But we'll have 5 minutes now just to think about these acronyms. So if you've missed the register, don't worry. Carol's going to post it in the chat for you again, but it's just at the top. Oh, she read my mind. Okay, 2 more minutes on those acronyms. Typical secondary school teacher telling you you've got 5 minutes and giving you 4, I know. Ooh, you don't want to go to the Teams meeting. Hang on, I'll just nip to the top.
I've just put it in, Sarah.
Ah, brilliant, thank you. If you still can't see that link in the chat, don't worry, I'll pop that in again in a moment. Okay, I'll make sure I put it back up before you get to the end, so don't worry too much. Okay, fastest fingers then. CEP, I gave you a bit of a clue as to what this meant. Who could be the first person to type into the chat what the CEP is? Milford Haven, and you said you were asleep. The career entry profile, brilliant, well done. A. Lewis, you're going to have to be a bit quicker than that if you're going to beat them down there at Milford. Okay, number 2, EV. What does EV stand for? Somebody's put all their answers in. You've given them all away. Yeah, it is the external verifier. Well done. Carol, did you see who got that answer in first? Need to make a note because it's the honour of having the fastest fingers that people are playing for you. Fantastic, well done. IM. IM is the
J. Clark McLean.
Oh, who was that? Sorry.
J. Clark McLean.
Oh, fantastic. PLE. It's all right, G. Davis. Don't worry. I wasn't clear. And this depends. Oh, see, and this depends, doesn't it? How quick your internet connection is. But Llanwern, obviously, it's there's no issues there.
No.
Okay, number 5. This is a tricky one.
We've got Rosnens. Oh my goodness, I can't pronounce it. I'm so sorry. H. Fruet
High
Jones.
School. Yep, fantastic. Appropriate body, brilliant. It is the appropriate body. What a fantastic name for a job. Number 6 then. Who are the EWC? They are the Education
Well done,
Workforce
Gallatin.
Council. Fantastic. Number 7, we know this one.
Milford Haven again.
Brilliant. She's on fire. Welsh Government, thank you very much. Number 8, easy one. It really is fastest finger because I know you all know this one.
Ooh, J. Clark McLean again.
Fantastic. And STS. What are we talking about when we refer to STS? I can see Not Quitting Tired there from the John Frost School. STS, it's a trickier one. Give you a bit of a clue. Short. No one.
Ooh.
It's short-term supply. Well done, Gowerton. Yeah, it's short-term supply. So when you see STS NQT, that refers to short-term supply NQT. So that's those NQTs who are not working on a contract in school. Number 10, who is the HT? The head teacher at St. Bridget's
Half term
School.
from Vickery. A Vickery half term.
Oh, we all wish, but we're nearly there. We're nearly there. We just got to hold on in there. And number 11, QTS. Qualified teacher status. It wasn't that long ago for you, was it? Brilliant, excellent. IND. IND. Any ideas? Alwyn, IND, what is it?
A light fudge, your question mark,
She
you were
beat
right.
me to it. She beat me to it, Sarah.
It's what?
Induction.
Induction, yeah, short for induction. And 13, last one, another tricky one actually. Thinking about safety, health and environment. Nice try, but no.
Oh, A Vickery again.
Sustained, highly effective practice. Excellent. A huge pat on the back for A Vickery Gowerton School. Well done, you. You did a phenomenal job there. Well done. Okay, you can all relax for a brief moment. Thank you ever so much for all your answers there, and high five, A Vickery. I think you just about pipped some of the others to the post there.
Sorry, J. Clark McLean also had 3, so joint winners.
There we go then. Thank you all. I really appreciate you popping those in the chat and interacting with us. Thank you very much. We're just going to have a little look at this now. Hopefully you've all managed to get into your profiles. And when you log into your Pebble Pad, this should be a familiar sight to you now. So this is what you can see. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of these tabs step by step today to help you really to make sure that you get the most out of all of it and complete all the steps that you'll need to as we move forward. So the first stage then is to talk about really your career entry profile. So if you trained in Wales, you'll know exactly what this is. It's that report that you wrote at the end of your ITE in conjunction with your tutor to identify really what the next steps for you were in terms of your own professional development. So you will have identified areas that you had strengths and areas where you needed to work on in order to strengthen. Okay, if you're not from an IT provider in Wales, you may well call this something else. It might have a different name where you are, but basically it fulfills the same function. So you might have something that you sat and worked on with your tutor towards the end of your course to let you know and help you identify really the areas that you would need to improve on. Okay, so it might be called something else, but in Wales we refer to that as the career entry profile. And if you completed your career entry profile last year in Wales, you will be able to find it in the repository. That's a section on the profile where all of the added documents that you worked on during IT can be found. So you'll be able to get that from the repository store. And then what you'll need to do is to upload that into your induction profile. So it will sit with all your IT work, but you need to download it from there and upload it into this step 1 area with the career entry profile. Okay, so as well as the career entry profile, then you've also got this self-review. And you might be thinking, well, I just put my career entry profile in there. Why are they asking me to do a self-review as well? And the reason for that is because what we were finding was when NQTs were doing their practice placements in one setting, they'd have a set of development priorities that they'd need to work on with those learners. But then obviously when you've come into induction now and you've moved into a new job, the learners in all likelihood will have changed. So you'll be working with a different group of learners, and therefore that will have an impact on your development priorities and the areas maybe that you'd be less confident in but need to develop. So the idea of this self-review is for you to have a think about your career entry profile and all the things that you identified in the past, but bring that forward now into your current situation, in your current setting, with your new and different learners, and to see whether some of those elements might match, but some may have to change. So it's to encourage you really to have that thought, that reflection around where your development priorities are. And you might use it to form the basis of a conversation with your induction mentor in school, because obviously chances are you won't know them particularly well. You'll be getting to know them. And this is actually a really good place where you can start to have a discussion around the areas that you feel least confident in, that maybe that induction mentor can then think about ways that they can include you in school life that can help you with your confidence in those areas. So I hope that's clear, the reasoning behind those. And really, if you haven't done that already, that should be something now that you're thinking about getting done, certainly before half term. Oh, it's only a few days away. Or something that you could think about maybe when you come back after your break in half term. But it's certainly something that should be more or less done about this time in the profile. Okay, I'm going to hand over now to Carol, because I think you've heard me long enough.
Thank you, Sarah. So the next part we're going to look at is in step 1 still. It's the Welsh framework. So this is a new area for the induction process. So what we're going to look at here is what is it? So when we're teaching in Wales, obviously we've got the Welsh framework to work from. This should have been completed or could have been completed in your ITE as well, or university, if you studied in Wales. If you studied outside of Wales, then there is a link on this page. If you scroll down a little bit, there's a click here for you to have a template, a blank template for you to fill it in now. So you can fill this in with your IM, have a discussion with them, or you can fill it in independently and then there will be a discussion afterwards. It's quite easy to upload. So once you've done it, it's like your when you uploaded your career entry profile. So you pop that in and it's there then as another source of evidence for you. It's a self-assessment of where you are in your Welsh language development. And this is going to stay with you because it's uploaded onto your PLP here. It'll give you information about your professional learning within Welsh language. And it's going to form part of your discussion with your IM or your EV if you're a short-term supply. And you can use it as part of your evidence for your PLEs as well. So what you need to do when you open the document, the blank document, there are 4 different areas and you have to plot where you are on those 4 different areas. So it's listening, oral, reading and writing. Then across the top of the grid, there are 6 different skill levels for you to identify. The first one is no Welsh language skills. Then it goes on to entry level, foundation, intermediary, advanced and proficient. So you then, underneath each of those, there are descriptors of what that skill level means. So you read through those, and in literacy you say, in listening you say, I think I'm at foundation level. And you click on that part of the grid and it will highlight it then. Once you've done that for all 4 areas, reading the descriptors to find out which area level you think you're at, you can then save that and it will be uploaded then as your career entry profile was to this space here. The instructions are on the screen, it's quite easy to follow. And if you wanted to, if one of your targets was a Welsh language target for your development, there's nothing to stop you maybe downloading another one where you could go back and look at how you've improved, and then that could be used as some sort of evidence for your PLE then as well. So hopefully you've done that already. It should be uploaded to your career entry profile. If not, you now know where to find it and what the purpose of that is as well. And your IM will go over that with you as well if you ask them. Okay, are we ready to go on to the next one, please? Thank you. All right, so now we're moving on to step 2 now. So once those 3 things have been uploaded in step 1, it will move you on to step 2 now. This is where you load up all your development targets or your development priorities, as they could be called. A discussion with the IM or your EV based on your career entry profile and your self-assessment that you've just done and your Welsh targets will help to identify the targets for the first term. So if you have a contract the first term or for your first 140 sessions. It's a professional dialogue with your IM and your EV, if you're a short-term supply, looking at ways to develop your professional learning and the skills you have. The targets set are to be worked on up to 140 sessions or the first term, and then they will be reviewed. Another set of targets will be set for you to work on your next session up to 270 sessions or the second term within the school. They need to be SMART targets so that you can identify how you're going to achieve them, what support you'll need, the time frame that you're working to, resources, and a success criteria so you can see how you'll know when you've achieved your targets. We are going to be using a Mentimeter code now, which is quite exciting for me. What areas of development have you identified so far? So by now you should have had your first set of targets set. If you haven't, that's something you need to talk to your IM about and see if you can get that ball rolling, but hopefully most of you have already got those set. So what we're asking now is for you to write on the Mentimeter code page, and let us know what sort of targets you've been set and what skills you're going to be developing with these targets. So if you all click onto the code, Sarah, how long do you want them to do this for, please?
They're going to have to be incredibly succinct because there's only, I think, 25 characters, but we'll have a look now at the sort of things you're coming up with.
Right.
Here we go. So you can see use of incidental Welsh, which follows on quite nicely from what we were just talking about.
And that would link then, you could show how much progress you've made within the first term and on your Welsh framework there. Anybody else? Ooh, there are behaviour management, stretching children and challenging them, not being set any targets yet. So if that's you, just have a little chat with your IM within the school, or if you're a short-term supply, get in contact with the EV who's been assigned to you so that you can get those targets set, because you're working on them up to 140 sessions, or if you've got a contract within school, the first term. Curriculum for Wales, I can see there.
Behaviour management's quite large, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? And then plans for higher ability, so there's stretching and challenging coming through as well. Welsh culture. It's nice that we're looking at the Welsh ethos here as well, so it's not just the Welsh language.
Yeah, and you know, if you're worried about those targets being set and you haven't been contacted by your EV yet, it might just be a case that EV hasn't been passed your information yet. Sometimes it takes the EWC, you know, about half a term, we normally say, in order to get everybody allocated an EV. So don't worry too much if you haven't been contacted, but if you still haven't heard from anyone in the first week after half term, then you need to get in touch with your local authority or regional consortia rep who can chase that up for you, okay? So lots of interesting targets set there.
I'm the EV for my cluster, and I've just had my email today, this morning, so they are coming out as late as now, so hopefully you'll get yours soon.
Brilliant. Lots of nice curriculum for Wales things there as well, which is lovely. Brilliant. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so once you've had your target set, you're going to be working on those targets now, and then hopefully once you finish this first term with your school, if you're with the placement scheme, you will finish your first term at the end of this autumn term now, and you need to review your targets then. So if we could go on to the next slide, is that okay?
Yeah, and I can see that people are asking, you know, how many targets is a good approach. Well, I would suggest that does vary, doesn't it, Carol, between NQT to NQT, but certainly 2 to 3 targets would be ideal, because don't forget you're going to be reviewing these towards the end of the term or after about 140 sessions. So they've got to be manageable and achievable for you in that period of time. So about 2, 3 is about right, I'd say.
So the review of your targets then, you're going to write your review, and there's an example of it on the screen in front of you now. So you'd write a review for each of the targets that has been set. Then this should be followed by, first of all, you should have a meeting with your induction mentor, where you talk to them about the targets. Have you achieved them? Some of them, for no fault of your own, you might not be able to achieve. But the times we are in at the moment, with sickness and people being off work, you never know what sort of problems that could throw up. So once you've completed your targets at 140, they do need to be reviewed. So your IM or your EV, if you're short-term supply, will then discuss with you if you've met your targets and how you know you've met your targets. Then the review on here is the NQT's review. So it needs to be what you're identifying, being reflective and evaluative of what you feel went well, what the issues were, so you can reflect on those as well. So here, I believe that I've improved my class management skill, and this has helped with Key Stage 4's challenging class behaviour. I use different strategies to engage and try to move on to a new topic if I see that the pupils are losing focus. This only works in theory lessons. There must be different strategies for practical lessons. I tend to go around the pupils offering one-to-one support to everyone. I believe that this is effective because it gives me the opportunity to see everyone's work and gives them the opportunity to ask questions. So here you can see that they've identified any issues that arose, what went well, and then briefly said why this was and how they're going to address that. The target here would probably have been fully met, and then they can move on to the next one then. Usually though, because you're having meetings with your IM and you're seeing them regularly, you will be on track to complete your targets, unless for, as I said, illness or circumstances beyond your control, something happens, then those targets could be carried over, as long as your EV is aware of that and what the reasons were. But by the time you get into 140 sessions, or the end of the target, you will, the end of the term, should have been on track to complete your targets there. The NQT writes their review of the targets, all 3 of them, if you have 3 or 2, whatever they've been set. Then your IM will write a review of your progress against these targets as well, and the EV will too. Once that's been done, then you have your next set of targets set for you, which could be on a totally different area, or it could be linked and you're developing it further or taking it off in a new angle. So that's another discussion between you and your IM, saying where you want your career development to go, and have they got any ideas, or if you want to do some research, maybe that could be linked into it as well. The review will take place. You should have a meeting at the end of your term or your 140 sessions, a formal meeting where you talk about the targets and have they been achieved, and then you will both have a good understanding of, yes, the targets have been achieved or partially achieved for whatever reason, and then those reviews are written. But the reviews do need to be written up at 140 or at the end of the first term. Okay. If you produce 3 targets in September, possibly, yes, that's quite right, because you might not have finished it, or there might be a reason for you to take it over. It could be quite a robust target that they've set you. So hopefully you understand about the targets now, but the importance of you reviewing them, the IM and the EV, at the end of specific sections within your time in induction period process. Okay, so we're going on now to another little game for you. So these numbers, now, are we going to have people typing them into the chat again? So would you like that to happen? Is that okay?
Oh, let's have some chaos, shall we? Should we go up through each one?
Okay, so
32.
What's the significance of that number 32 in the induction process?
It's the amount of professional standards.
There.
Really?
Not standards. Anybody else want to shout out, or you can put in the chat if you're shy? 32. Oh,
now we've caused consternation now. Oh.
Rebecca Collins, well done. It's 32 descriptors. There are 32 descriptors that have to be mapped against. You have to include. Look at evidence for those. Okay, next one.
Oh,
5.
A victory, please. No, don't do 32 PLEs. No.
No. Oh, I wouldn't want to be approving all of those. No.
It's
5. What's the significance of 5?
S. Roy, Ysgol Aberconwy, standards.
And let's see if you get bonus points if you remember what the standards were. Does anybody remember some of them?
Oh, if you can get all 5 in the chat, I'll be really impressed.
I would be. Oh, innovation is 1. Yes. Pedagogy. Collaboration. Oh, someone's. Oh, McLean again. Leadership. And there's 1. Oh, there's professional learning. There we are. So there are 5 standards: pedagogy, leadership, innovation, collaboration, and professional learning. Well done. 4 to 6. What do you think that refers to? 4 to 6. PLEs. What about the PLEs? Evidence. I think we need to go down the PLE road.
So it is something to do with PLEs. 4 to 6 PLEs.
Oh, there you go. Per term.
Brilliant. So yeah, if you're doing 4 to 6, 4 to 6 PLEs per term is the number that we kind of recommend. And in addition to that, if you get the right number at the end if you're working on 4 to 6 PLEs per term.
You're on track. You won't rush at the end then. Okay, 12 to 20. What is the 12 to 20 linked to? So you've had PLEs per term. So what would 12 to 20 be?
I can see somebody's got it there. A. Jones, Gwenville Community Primary. Yeah, it's the amount of PLEs to write that you're going to link those 32 standards to, or descriptors to.
And then 3 to 5 is your next one. 3 to 5.
Oh, I think you sent them.
Oh, descriptors per PLE. There you go. We've got that one. So it's the descriptors that you link to each PLE. We recommend no more than 5, because otherwise the PLE will be sort of weakened. It won't be as strong and robust. So we do say 3 to 5 where there are meaningful links that you can say that's a robust PLE then, rather than you've made a link because you haven't made a link to that standard, that descriptor before, and you need to cram it in somewhere. Okay, and your last one, 380. Well done, E. Williams. So that's the total sessions in the year. So by the time you hit that magic number of 380 sessions, your induction period should be complete, all your PLE is completed, or lesson observations, all of those things you need to pass your induction should be completed. We have to note here though that the 17th of June, your induction profile or your PLP, everything needs to be completed by the 17th of June because they need to go in for moderation. So we need the ABs and the leads to moderate the profiles so that they can be passed then. So that's the 17th of June, which falls a little bit short of the 380 sessions, but that's for moderation purposes. So the review's completed, all your PLEs approved and completed, and your lesson observations complete as well by that magic number. Well done, everyone.
Hiya, can I ask a question? I know you've got 380 sessions, but I've just been off through no fault of mine because I had COVID. So I've been off since, well, I came in last Tuesday, but I only sort of made the morning, but I've only come back today. So what happens then? Because I don't think there's any sort of discretion about COVID this year, is there? Unlike the PGC year.
Are you on a placement scheme? Are you on the placement scheme?
Yeah.
Because that usually runs like a normal teacher, that you are allowed sickness in those sessions. So that wouldn't be taken, you wouldn't be penalised for that because you are allowed sickness.
Wait,
that's correct for everybody?
Yeah, no, it is. You can take up to 60 sessions of sickness without that affecting your induction.
Right, so 60 session would be how many days? What
30
does that
days.
translate? 30 days, right, okay, oh, that's all right then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, right then, so the next part is professional standards. So this again now is on the top banner in your induction profile, your PLP, and there are different headings for you to look at in here. So there's a drop down menu if you click on the little arrow next to professional standards, and one of the headings is mapping awaiting approval. So when you go into that, that will give you a list of the PLEs that you put forward and the evidence you put forward that are waiting to be approved by your IM or your EV if you're a short-term supply. So that will let you keep an eye on what ones haven't been approved and maybe have a discussion with your IM then about which ones have been approved, and it'll also help your IM to see which ones they need to go in to approve. The next heading then says assessment levels. Now this is the sliding scale, which we're going to come on to in a few slides time. There will be a graph to show you where you have placed yourself. So within that, it'll show you, are you more induction, are you more QTS or sustained higher effective, sustained highly effective practice. That's the one there. The next, in professional standards again, in the drop-down menu, there's mapped experiences. So this will show you against pedagogy, professional learning, innovation, collaboration and leadership. That will show you how many descriptors you have evidence against. So in pedagogy, there are 17. In professional learning, there are 4 descriptors. Innovation 3, collaboration 4 and leadership 4. That will take you up to the 32 then, and it will show you how many you've evidenced against there, and how many are completed and how many have evidence linked to them, because not all of them have to have evidence linked to them. Okay, so that's a handy little place for you to go to look at how you're doing, how you're finishing off and completing all your PLEs in that area there. There are also then, on this slide you can see, there's a link down the bottom where you can access more information on the teaching and learning standards. You're required to evidence at least the level of induction to complete your induction year. So here we've got the different descriptors here for you. Sorry, for your standards, I'm sorry. Leadership, which is leading colleagues, projects and programs. Pedagogy is on there, the biggest section there, exploiting subject disciplines in areas of learning. There's innovation, evaluating the impact of changes in practice. Collaboration, working together, enabling effective pedagogy to spread. And professional learning, taking effective pedagogy deeper. You will be looking at all of those areas within the year that you are completing your induction process, or the 380 sessions that it takes you if you're on supply instead. So there's a diagram, and as I said, the link is there for you as well. Once you've done that, if we can go on to the next screen if possible, thank you. So here is the slider I mentioned before, and Sarah, when I was talking about, she skipped to this one to show you what it looks like as well. So this can be found in the professional standards drop down. This is the slider scale. There is a link at the bottom as well for you to get more information on this and the different descriptions that they give for each. So when you map a descriptor on the PLE, you fill this in, you use a slider to fill it in. Are the descriptors the same as the QTS ones you worked on last year? Well, the answer is no, they're not, because each level that you move through builds upon previous experience, and your practice is getting better and more improved as you're going through. So the QTS, as you can see, is the lower level. That's when you were training to be a teacher, so of course it would be lower. Then we've got induction, which is what we're in now. So where you are now and for this year. So don't panic that your induction descriptor is where you are plotting yourself for the year, because that's where you should be, because your induction year. And then you can move on to sustained highly effective practice there. You will see on the slide there's quite a gap between induction and sustained highly effective practice, and there's a reason for that, because that's as your career progresses, you move into that section, and some areas you'll move quicker than others, and others you'll take your time to move along to them. The sliding scale can go in between those stations there, so QTS, induction and sustained. It can go in between as you feel you're getting, I'm just out of induction, but I'm not there at sustained yet, so I'm going to move myself along the slider. These sliders then will help your IM to have that discussion with you, because if I were to see, for example, every one of your sliders is on sustained highly effective, there would be a conversation that we would have then, so saying, can you give me evidence of where you feel you are, why you feel you're at that stage? Let's break down the descriptor to analyse this. Are we there? And we can move it back and forth, so it can be fluid, that one can be. If you have a look at the descriptor for each one, you can see that there are differences. I wonder, are we going to write this in the chat? Sarah, do you want to do that, or do you want me to just carry on?
Yeah, we can do some chat.
Okay, so if you could try and have a look at the QTS, induction and sustain, can you identify the differences that are there? What are the differences do you feel between one level and the next? Is anyone going to be brave and put something in? Don't worry if you're not feeling confident enough to do, that's fine. We can work through these together. I'll give you a few more seconds. Oh, confidence and experience. Okay, so if we're looking at the wording here, we need to be looking at the types of wording that you use. It's the same as when you were in doing your teacher training. You had different standards, so you understood, you recognised those different wordings there. The emphasis switches over to the learners, that's right, moves further away from the teacher as you go further up, you're right there. And the reflection needs to be far more in depth as well. Yes, competence as well. So maybe you can see in the QTS one, it says teacher understands and demonstrates effective established management of the class, and then it moves on to focus on building learning habits. So they, instead of established ones there or then and focusing on those, I'm now developing them. So I put another layer on top. Consistent practice as well for the sustained one, you're right. And then of course the top one, the emphasis more on the learner. You've given them all the tools, you've set up a set of strategies and processes within your class, and the children are now able to take that forward. Growing responsibility, you're quite right there, because it's not me putting these in place now, the children are developing that themselves, but only because you've put those strategies in place and you've managed the learning environment in such a way. So induction descriptor should be where you are hitting. If you feel you're hitting a little bit in towards the sustained, highly effective, you can put that in there, and then there'd be a discussion with your IM.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Well, you can see that we've met an all-important pause break. So can I ask you all, please, to stay in the room, but feel free to keep your cameras off and mute, but just take 10 minutes to go and grab a cup of coffee, have a comfort break, just take a screen break, a bit of a stretch. Let's see if we can get you towards sheep number 9. Okay, so we'll meet back at 25 past, if that's okay, so about 10 minutes. Okay, so welcome back. I can see somebody's just knocked the camera on. I think it's our Reese in Milford. I'm not sure if you meant to do that. Going to start at the second part of the session now by looking at PLEs specifically. And during this session, we'll also hopefully go into some breakout rooms to give you some time to have a chat. I have everything crossed with the weather the way it is, that's going to work, so hopefully it will. And then we will be finishing off our session in about 3/4 of an hour, I think, okay? So, in terms of your PLEs then, so these are some of the 4 key top tips, if you like, or things that we really need you to consider when you're writing a PLE. So writing the PLEs under the profile headings with a key focus on what has been learnt. Now, there's no specific requirement to do that on the profile, but it does make it a lot easier for you and your IM to see exactly what you've covered. So a really good idea to try and write headings with the key focus on what has been learnt, or even the descriptor at the top. That can be really helpful as well. So something for you to think about when you're writing those PLE templates. Okay. In addition to that, it talks about mapping a PLE to no more than 3 or 5 descriptors. So as Carol's already said, really, you know, for a really strong PLE, you might get as many as 5 descriptors, but between 3 and 5 is the absolute maximum that we would recommend you attaching to any PLE. Any more than that, and it does just weaken the PLE, and generally they're not as relevant as they could be. So if you think it's tenuous, that it meets that descriptor, don't add it. I'm sure you'll find another example later on in the year that would fit that better. Then just a little talk about assets. So assets, or evidence, if you like, towards backing up what you've said on your PLE. In terms of assets, there's no need to prove what you've said on your PLE, because that's done by your IM when they approve your that PLE as it goes forward into your profile. But it is sometimes helpful for you to add an asset that explains a little bit more, or shows a little bit more than you're able to in the narrative. So for example, last year we had a few cases where somebody might be doing the Gruffalo with their class. They would take a photograph of the cover of the Gruffalo and upload that as an example of an asset. That's not really adding anything additional to your PLE there, so it's not a useful exercise. In the same way as adding documentation, covers of, you know, it's not useful, just don't do it. However, you might be looking at policy, guidance, or documentation that you've annotated. So you've you can show then that you've read it, you've understood it, and you've made notes on how you're going to apply that. That would be a meaningful, useful asset, because that would add to the PLE that you were writing about and add to the whole story, if you like, and the reflection around those descriptors. So just think carefully before you spend a lot of time uploading irrelevant assets. Are these really relevant? Are they adding to what I'm trying to say? And another little tip, if you download the PebblePad app onto your phone, it makes adding assets even easier. So yeah, it's the PebblePad app. It is free. And if you keep that on your phone, you can just take a photo of something, might be a piece of work or anything that you want to be able to upload as an asset, and that makes that quite easy and straightforward as well. Obviously, just think about GDPR when you're doing that. That needs to be factored in. No faces, no names, nothing that would identify an individual on that asset. Okay, and then again, a reminder, aim to create between 12 and 20 PLEs. And again, we're talking about 3 to 6 of those PLEs written per half term. Again, it's going to vary between individuals, but what we really don't want you to be doing is getting towards May and then desperately, frenetically writing loads and loads and loads of PLEs to try and catch up. And to be honest with you, you know, we're training with IMs and EVs we do say that if there's no evidence of any PLEs by Christmas, then that is a cause for concern. It's an issue that we would be worried about because it tells us that you're not engaging with your induction profile. So useful for you to aim, think about 3 every half term at least. And, you know, we appreciate that that varies, but please, please, please don't be writing them. I've had people say before they've written them in Word documents and they're going to upload them all later. No, we want to see the work on your profile because we want to be able to support you with that and make sure that you get the most amount of reflection that you can from those PLEs. Okay, so just a few further notes. Unbelievably, you wouldn't believe how many PLEs don't have titles. Okay, so please, please remember to put a title on your PLE. Talk a little bit about what you did and why. And I do mean a little bit about what you did and why, because that's a narrative. That's just describing a little bit about what the situation is, where the learners are, why you chose to do it. But what we really want you to think about, and the largest section on that profile should be, on that PLE, sorry, should be, what have you learnt and what next? Thinking about how the experience will impact on your practice. Okay, so those are the key parts of a PLE, really. It's very easy, I think. We get a bit carried away sometimes when you write a PLE, just describing what you've done. But that's really not the point. The point is for you to really think and unpick. Did this work? Yes, no, why not? What am I going to do differently and what have I learned from this experience? Okay, so if we move on to the next slide. Often the question that we get asked is, but how do I start? Where do I start? Where do I start writing? How do I do that? But think about an experience that you feel you've learnt a lot from. They do happen, I think, daily, perhaps less so at this point in the half term when we're approaching a holiday. But, you know, there will be experiences that you just know that you've learnt a lot from when you get that yes moment, when something's gone really well, or when you get that sinking feeling when you think, oh, this isn't quite going as I planned. But they're all really, really valuable learning experiences. And, you know, don't forget to write about the things that maybe didn't go so well in your profile as well, because those are important learning experiences for you. And that's the point, really, of those PLEs. So reflection then on that experience and how it's strengthened, changed or affected your practice. Draft out your thoughts under the key headings, focusing more detail on the what I have learnt and next steps sections. And then looking at the descriptors and deciding which 3 to 5 descriptors you're going to attach to that PLE. And then later in the year, you possibly need to think about another way around and identify, what descriptors haven't yet been mapped. But that will be much, much later in the year. And certainly, not at this point. You should be choosing really rich experiences that you've learned from in your classroom. So I hope that helps in terms of that. We are going to ask you to do a little task now. I'm going to put a link in the chat first of all, which might look a bit odd, but I can see that there are 104 of us on the call, 121 of us now on the call today. And I've prepared a Google Docs for you that I'd like you to look at doing the task. I have put 3 links to a Google Doc there. If your surname begins with an A to an L, I'd like you to click on the first link, please. If your surname begins with an M to a Z, you can click on the second link. And if either of those don't work, you can click on the third link. Okay, and what that's going to take you to, hopefully, is 2 PLEs that we'd like you to discuss when you go into the breakout rooms. You're going to look at them and discuss the strengths on one of them and the areas for development on the other Google Doc. In addition to that, we'd like you to talk about an experience that you've had so far that you might be able to write up as a PLE. So this is a brilliant opportunity for you now to start chatting with each other and stealing ideas for PLEs from each other. So examples of those things could be a lesson, contact with a parent, listening to learners, parents' evening, that kind of thing, okay? But just giving you about 20 minutes now in breakout rooms to have a look at PLE strengths in the first instance, areas for development in the second, and then to have a little chat about something that you could or you have already written up as a PLE with your peers.
Into the outdoor area and implemented them, and they worked well. Helping a formal class to plan a lesson, as an assembly, I'm sorry, so that could help the children leading the learning there. Dealing with a safeguarding issue, just remember that your confidentiality, we don't need names, we don't need details, but you just, maybe you could put how it made you think differently about the way you set up your class. Maybe your regulation stations, for example, that you've thought differently about how that would work for you. Meeting a parent, the feedback back and forth, that reporting back and forth to your parents, and what comes from that. Did it influence how the children then are able to progress in class? And as it says, the list is endless. There's lots of things you're doing right now that you've done already that you can put into a PLE and make those good links then to the standards and to the descriptors. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide now. Feedback. So again, this is on the your induction profile on the EWC, the PLP there. When you access it, you'll see this little blue square with a little, I also think it looks like a calculator, but I think it's a grid and a table, obviously. That's on every page. So you can use this to leave feedback and comments. So you can put things in here that you want noted. Your IM would put things in here as well that they want noted, and your EV as well. So it is for everyone to view. So everyone who has a stake in what you're doing will be able to see this feedback here. It's where all the feedback should go. So really, we don't encourage emails back and forth on private emails. It should all go through the feedback section here so that everyone can see it, because it's a safety net really. If in a couple of weeks' time you say, but I wasn't told that, if that information is put in the feedback section as a note or part of the minutes from a meeting, then it's there as a record for you as well as NQTs. You can say, well, I've asked for a certain learning opportunity, but I haven't had a response back from it. Then you've got evidence of it in the feedback too. In the feedback, there should be things like your PLE feedback. So when I'm looking at as an IM, if I'm looking at your PLEs, I would leave feedback in here about the PLE, tips on maybe how we could tighten it up, tips on saying, well, do you really think that descriptor links well with this? So I might have that conversation with you as well, but I would record it formally in the feedback section. And then I would also put down here that once I've signed off, just so we've got a running list of what's happened with regards to the PLEs. Another thing that could go on here is agendas for meetings. So you should be having meetings regularly with your IM and also with your EV within your cluster. And then those agendas could go on there. The minutes from the meeting could go on there as well, so they're all agreed upon. Points that your IM might want you to focus on particularly, again, with links to the feedback for the PLEs. Lesson observation forms could go on here as well, and they're quite easy to upload. You click on the I want to button and you either leave feedback or upload a document, so it's quite simple to go through. And as I said, your EV, your AB and your IM will be commenting on here as well, not just yourself. The newest feedback comment will always be at the top, and it's date stamped as well and time stamped to the second, so that you've got a record of when that was put on and released back to the NQT or to the IM. Okay, so that's that one. Well, we have now come to the last part of our meeting. Thank you for holding on to your questions. We appreciate that. The slide after this, there we are, look, well-oiled team here, look. these are your contact details for the various regions. So if you need to get in contact with anyone and your IM can't help you, or the EV, then these are the contact details for you to use as well. So thank you for holding on to your questions, and we appreciate that. And I'm going to hand back to Sarah now for the last part.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So thank you all once again for joining us. We're really grateful for the time you spent with us this afternoon, and we do sincerely hope it's been useful. So please do let us know. Please fill in the feedback forms that are sent to you. It won't be sent immediately, it'll be over the next few days. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts, or if there's anything else that you need or would prefer to see in this training. This the whole package really is still developing, so we can certainly manage to work it into your November and December sessions if it's something that we can help with. If you don't have any further questions now, you are very welcome to leave. It's 3:15 and I can see out the window it's just starting to feel like it's getting dark here, but it might just be the weather. So I wish you all a really wonderful and restful half-term break. But as I say, if you wish to stay on and ask some questions and unmute or put something in the chat, we'll do our best to answer you. Diolch yn fawr, have a lovely, restful half term.